Okay, ready.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ilona Kearney. I'm running for governor next year. That's in August, just so you know when it is. So know that there's 2 times to vote, because I remember when I was younger, I always thought voting was only in August. Never thought about November, or some people only know November, not August. But it's 2 times to get out and vote next year. So today we have, so how this came about is, I know that when we're out and we're, like, sometimes people like to throw our past stuff in our face when we're trying to do better, or we're trying to grow and be a better version of ourselves, that we tend to get defensive, or we become passionate in taking up for whether it's people or ourselves, and we tend to get labeled as angry women, or be seen as aggressive. And I know with campaigning, that's not something that I would want to be portrayed as. And I know a lot of the other ladies on the team were saying they don't want the same thing for themselves, just in regular lives daily. So I said, well, then we'll just share the whole learning experience together. So my campaign, Uniting Communities and Removing Labels, to me this brings unity, and it's a sense of community, us working together, helping each other to heal and grow, and learn how to be part of solutions and not about complaining or being part of the issues. And today, our third guest speaker will be coming soon, but right now we have Miss Benita Horn, who is, it's on your placemats too, these are your little souvenirs. Ms. Benita Horn is a dedicated community member. She is renowned for her exceptional efforts in fostering inclusivity and awareness within Renton. Honored on Benita Horn Day, she has been pivotal in creating opportunities to celebrate diversity cultural experiences. Her instrumental role in establishing the Renton Equity Commission underscores her commitment to advancing social, economic, and racial justice. And she will be our speaker today. I think it says on here she's a DEI specialist as well. And then we have here Sierra Jackson is the owner of Real Deal Fashion. She has owned the company for over 2 years. Sierra thrives off helping women build their own style and confidence. And so she will be talking about our confidence portion. And so I'm going to let whichever one of you who wants to open up. Okay.
I can start.
Okay.
Okay, I have to write things down because otherwise I talk endlessly. And good morning, everybody. I was or is it good afternoon? Good afternoon. I was asked to talk about positive pivoting and code switching. And, I really had to think about, especially code switching, what does that mean? And one definition that I found on the web that made sense to me says that code switching is the ways in which a member of an underrepresented group either consciously or unconsciously adjusts their language, syntax, grammatical structure, behavior, and appearance to fit in with the dominant culture. And I thought about my own experience. Like if I'm out in the community and I run into like a girlfriend, he's like, hey, what's going on? And in the workplace, it's, hello, how are you? And that's a form of code switching. So what I wanted to do was to share with you a little bit of my research, because the driving force is that we all want to fit in. We all want to feel a part of something. We all want to feel as though we belong. And one of my discoveries over the years, based on some work that I've done since 2000, in bringing together people women of African descent in this country, and women on the continent of Africa, particularly Kenya, East Africa, to build relationships, to understand each other. We don't know each other's history, and we've been lied to about each other's history. Our ancestors went through enslavement. Their ancestors went through colonization, very similar experience. And so that has helped really socialize and build who we see as ourselves in the world. And so I thought about what one of my aunties always liked to say, which is, never forget who you are and who you represent. And so that led me into doing some research, and so I'm going to share with you this short research paper. Since the beginning of time, women leaders have not only been a part of history, but have created history and sustained development throughout the world. Women have risen as leaders in their families, in their communities, in their countries. At times, women have stepped into leadership through divine inspiration, at times from choice, at times from necessity, and at times through inheritance of roles formerly filled by husbands or fathers. History reveals that they often stepped into these leadership roles despite tremendous opposing forces. So growing up as a girl, youth, woman of African descent in the Pacific Northwest, I was blessed to be surrounded by remarkable women in my family and community who modeled leadership for me. As a result, I have never doubted my ability to earn a living, provide for my family, own my own home, or make meaningful contributions to my community. So I want to take you through a little bit of why that experience has been for me. My grandmother, for example, moved her family to Portland, Oregon around 1920. And because shortly before that time, the entire Oregon Territory had been founded as a white homeland, there were many laws and community covenants that limited areas where people of African descent could live, or even if they could live in that territory, or where they could work. So despite or in spite of these laws, my grandmother was the first woman of African descent to graduate from the Sanitary Beauty College in Portland, Oregon. She opened a beauty salon in her home, serving the women in our community, and raised her 3 sons as a single parent, which was an unusual accomplishment for her time. She also integrated the Mount Tabor neighborhood, which had been exclusively white, by purchasing a home from a family moving out of state and moving her family into this new home after dark. My mother worked in the shipyards during World War II. She was our own Rosie the Riveter. She was the first woman of African descent to supervise the traffic department for the city of Portland, and the first appointed court clerk to the presiding judge from Multnomah County. She strongly believed if you want it done right, do it yourself, and modeled that value as she repaired and tuned her automobiles, remodeled her home, or landscaped her yard. So these women inspired me to conduct research on the women of African descent who have been omitted from our history, but nonetheless were major contributors in the development of the United States. I found models of leadership similar to those with which I was most familiar. Women like Harriet Tubman, known for having been the greatest conductor of the Underground Railroad. She was born a slave in Maryland, and in 1848 successfully escaped despite the threat from her husband to report her to their master. Ida B. Wells Barnett, who was co-founder of the NAACP, an anti-lynch crusader and a courageous journalist. When she lost both of her parents at age 14, she raised her 4 younger brothers and sisters alone. Mary Jane McLeod, who was an educator, a contributor to race relations, an advisor to U.S. presidents, and founded a college that became a 4-year accredited college. And Maria W. Stewart, who was the first American-born woman to lecture in public, best known for speeches that addressed issues of Black economic advancement. Or, in most recent history, leaders like Josephine Baker, an internationally celebrated dancer and stage performer who performed intelligence work for the Italian government during World War II. Shirley Chisholm, who was the first woman of African descent elected to the U.S. House of Representatives and the first to make a bid for the presidential nomination for the Democratic Party. Marian Wright Edelman, who founded the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, was the first woman of African descent admitted to the bar in Mississippi, and she founded the Children's Defense Fund. And of course, we'll always remember Barbara Jordan, who was the first person of African descent to become state senator in the state of Texas. She served 3 terms in the U.S. House of Representatives and was the first woman to make a keynote speech before the Democratic National Convention. In fact, these women represent less than a microscopic sampling of women of African descent who have filled significant roles in leadership in the United States. In 2000, when I traveled to Kenya as a member of the first Cultural Reconnection delegation, what struck me initially was first, the strong leadership qualities that I observed in each of the women I met. And second, that these were models of leadership with which I was familiar. I saw women leading in ways that uplifted their men and children and built capacity in their communities. Our cultural reconnection delegations are based on the research of Dr. Marcia Tatarunga and published as her graduate thesis under the title Exploration into the Process of Cultural Reconnection for African American Women. The 4 features of her research design were culture and gender specificity, collective action, acknowledging African-centered rituals, ongoing shared dialogue. The feature of culture and gender specificity has propelled us as women of African descent to seek out, get to know, and establish relationships with women in Kenya. We find in Kenya's in our own culture that it is generally the women who are stewards of culture and who pass on culture in their communities through modeling culture, teaching culture to their children, and maintaining the customs, traditions, and cultural acknowledgments that keep culture alive. Aspects of women's leadership are distinctive and provide a necessary balance in our world order. Many researchers have documented the leadership attributes of women of African descent. Our leadership has always required a careful balance of dismantling the double oppression of gender and race, while ensuring that everyone in our community moves forward. In her book, When and Where I Enter, The Impact of Black Women on Race and Sex in America, Paula Giddings aptly captures this balance. To quote her, throughout their history, Black women also understood the relationship between the progress of the race and their own feminism. Women's rights were an empty promise if Afro-Americans were crushed under the heel of a racist power structure. In times of racial militancy, Black women threw their considerable energies into the struggle, even at the expense of their feminist yearnings. However, when militancy faltered, Black women stepped forward to demand the rights of their race from the broader society and their rights as women from their men. The latter demand was not seen in the context of race versus sex, but as one where their rights had to be secured in order to assure Black progress. I have observed many aspects of leadership modeled both by women of African descent in the United States and by the women I've met in Kenya. There are 4 I would like to highlight. The first aspect I noticed in Kenya is the spirit of collaboration and cooperation through dialogue. Some years ago, I attended a management seminar on leadership, and the main message from the presenter was that although both men and women are leaders in the business world, that men have been socialized from an early age to be team players in sports activities, whereas this is something women must learn. My own experience, observations, and research reveal exactly the opposite of this premise. What is often nurtured in sports is the spirit of dominance and competition. Women are more often nurtured in building community. What has historically worked against recognitions of the strengths women often bring to any endeavor is that the majority of research has been done by and for men. One example of this is a study recently published in Psychological Review on female responses to stress. The following excerpt is from that article. Until this study was published, scientists generally believe that when people experience stress, they trigger a hormonal cascade that revs the body to either stand and fight or flee as fast as possible, explains Laura Cosino-Klein, PhD, now an assistant professor of biobehavioral health at Pennsylvania State University, and one of the study's authors. It's an ancient survival mechanism left over from the time we were chased across the planet by saber-toothed tigers. Now, the researchers suspect that women have a larger behavioral repertoire than just fight or flight. In fact, says Dr. Klein, it seems that when the hormone oxytocin is released as part of the stress response in a woman, it buffers the fight or flight response and encourages her to tend children and gather with other women instead. When she actually engages in this tending or befriending, studies suggest that more oxytocin is released, which further counters stress and produces a calming effect. Another aspect of women's leadership I have observed is the ability to see the big picture, or all aspects of a situation at the same time. One example of this has been the women who founded the Alta Brim Orphanage in Kisumu, Kenya. When we asked them about their priorities, what they shared with us is that they were working on creating sustainable income for the orphanage, bringing solar light to aid the children in doing their homework in the evening. There's no electricity where they were located. Planning to build indoor bathrooms so the children would not have to go outside at night to relieve themselves, and networking to create opportunities for the children to excel in school and to position them to be competitive in education and jobs post-secondary school. In other words, their plans sustained the home for the children, prepared them to be contributors in their communities after they left the orphanage. A third aspect of leadership I've consistently observed in women is project planning and implementation. Women leaders are adept at simultaneously developing and communicating a clear vision while attending to all the details of implementation. One example of this was our experience with the Duangal Women's Group, who worked collectively to purchase water tanks for their village. One of their goals was to raise enough money to purchase tanks for all of the homes in their village instead of purchasing them one by one. Their premise was that if all of the tanks were one project, then if they divided the project into individual tanks, it would slow their momentum and their spirit of working as a team. It's like, I've got my water tank, I'm done, right? So the success of their efforts is evident in this aspect of their leadership. And then the last aspect of leadership in women that I mentioned here is the ability to multitask. The traditional European models are logical and linear. They encourage a step-by-step approach while focusing on one task at a time. In women of African descent, both in Kenya and the United States, I've observed the ability to simultaneously address a number of issues or tasks and successfully bring all of them to an effective conclusion. So, in today's increasingly complex world, where we are all so intricately connected, it's important to both recognize and celebrate the fact that many aspects of leadership are required to carry us forward. These and other aspects of the leadership strengths embodied by women in our community are essential to the continued growth and development of our families and communities. So as I think about positive pivoting and code switching, I ask us each to remember that first of all, we aren't broke and don't need to be fixed. That second, we come from a long and rich history of women who look like us and have succeeded in some of the most challenging leadership roles in the world. And thirdly, that we are never alone. We come together in groups like this today to support each other. We, each of us, stand on the shoulders of all of the women who went before us, and it's now our role to broaden our shoulders so the women coming behind us can stand on ours. And so I don't know that there's an antidote to code switching, but I think a good part of turning that around is remembering who we are and who we represent.
Thank you, Ms. Levita. And we're going to move on to Sierra. Okay.
So yeah, I am Sierra Jackson. I own Real Deal Fashion, and I'll be talking about like imposter syndrome and like what it means and like how you could feel it. And maybe you have it now and you don't know that you do, and this is maybe what you need. So, but yeah, I'll be talking about kind of my own experience with how I interpreted. Yeah, basically my own imposter syndrome over the years and like how I kind of got to my situation now. So I'll kind of read what I wrote down. Okay, so years ago, I've always wanted to own my own company. I knew it was in fashion, but I didn't know what it was exactly. In college, I took a business class about the steps for creating your own business and like pitching your ideas. My own company was on custom jeans for people. That gave me confidence to get my own business license. I looked into how to manufacture them, get seamstress, and a staff. It was a lot of work and very intimidating, so unfortunately I canceled my business license and put that aside. Years later, I got a job in Capitol Hill as a manager at a consignment shop. It was my first job in a high position. I was excited yet nervous. As the time went on, I felt like I wasn't catching on as fast as I thought I would. Instead of just doing daily tasks and talking to customers, I had to help with like big pictures, scheduling, payroll, etc. I was not used to it at all, basically, and I started feeling like an imposter. I didn't feel confident in the task handed to me. I was wondering if the owner was even happy with like hiring me in the position I was in. So that was really hurtful for my own self, like putting myself into that. But I did push myself out of it, so I just asked lots of questions and get as much help as I possibly could so I didn't have to feel like that anymore. Then COVID hit, of course. The business wasn't marked as an essential business, so unfortunately I didn't have a job for a while and the store wasn't open. And then we got to open again, and basically the owner realized that we couldn't keep the shop anymore, it had to be closed down. So around that time, she asked me to basically take on the shop by myself and if I wanted to own it. And I told her no, because I was like, no, I'm not ready to do something like that by myself. But she told me to keep thinking about it, and then I eventually said yes. So I just started getting my business license back up and getting all the licenses for me to continue to like basically own a business. As we are closing the store and cleaning up, I was getting all my licenses. Like I said, the original owner was my mentor, so she helped me with ways to continue consignment and buying new clothes. When the business started, I was confident, but it started to fade, my confidence. I wasn't getting as many orders, my social media was slow, and I felt the feeling of being an imposter again. But then I started thinking of ways to get more business. I started to advertise, buy different types of clothing, and even attending pop-up markets and just networking. As time went on, I got further out of feeling like an imposter. I'm still learning more ways to build my company. What always helps is to stay in your lane and keep an open mind. Mainly stay true to your passion. Like, I love clothes and the way it makes me feel. I want to help women find passion and continue that feeling and confidence. so that's what I'm trying to continue in my business. So yeah, internally, I always felt like I wasn't doing things right, even though externally, I was doing all the things right, but I did not feel confident. So with me building and pushing through, I definitely built myself up and know how to control myself in this life.
So next we have, I didn't read her bio yet, which is Miss Edwina Martin Arnold, is the author of several romance books. She's also a DEI professional as well. She is a hopeless romantic and a true believer in happily ever after. However, Edwina knows that the path to real love is rarely straightforward. To the contrary, it is often paved with many turns and a peril or two. In real life and in the stories she creates. When Edwina isn't daydreaming about love, she's using her law degree to fight for civil rights or is coaching basketball.
Thank you for that introduction, and I can so relate with what you're talking about, because oftentimes I felt like an imposter or fake it till you make it, you know, and then now I've just decided the only way to fail is to give up. So, you know, as long as you keep trying and working at it, you're good. And so I wasn't here asked to talk about that. I was asked to talk about code switching and conflict resolution. And it was interesting to me. Just a little bit of background. I was a prosecutor during the war on drugs. Went home to take care of my kids. Started a couple of businesses, one not far from here, Major League Barber and Beauty, which just recently closed. That was one of our businesses. And also Philly Favory Cheesesteak off of 23rd and Madison. That was another one of our businesses. And so 2012 went back to traditional work, because you know you work when you're at home. Went back to traditional work, and I've been in the DEI field since then. So I was asked today to talk about code switching and conflict resolution, and to me, code switching is conflict resolution. I was born in 1965 in San Antonio, Texas. So, hey, what part of Texas are you from?
San Antonio.
Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. I was born at the military base there.
Okay,
Yeah.
that one?
Yeah, and so the Army one. Gosh, I forgot the name right now. That's a senior moment. Anyway, you know, code switching, the term is kind of interesting to me. I didn't learn it until my D&I work, because in my day it was survival. Mm-hmm. Your parents taught you that so you could survive in today's world. And so today I'm gonna focus on a definition for code switching, some of the impacts, and what we can do moving forward. So there's a lot of definitions for code switching. I'm focusing on cultural code switching. And the definition for that is, that involves the suppression of multiple aspects of one's cultural identity. So, like I said, to me, it was a survival tactic. My mom came from Lafayette, Louisiana, right? Dark skin with straight hair. So guess what I did as soon as I was old enough? I went and got a perm. I grew up in Spanaway. I wanted to seem more acceptable and look more like my mother. And every time I went to Louisiana, you know, you got colorism that is rampant. You know, my mother, if you were darker than the color of a paper bag, you couldn't get into the party. And so even though she had straight hair, she was too dark to get into the party. So, you know, that's the environment that I grew up in. And so I had a brother, 9 years older than me, and in the 70s, he was in the insurance industry. And he had the audacity to wear braids to work. So they told him, take those braids out your hair or you no longer work here. So that was a big discussion in my family. So he took the braids out of his hair, and took him 2 years, but he became an independent agent. So he could wear his hair however he wanted to. So my daughters, you know, I'm wearing perms. When did I have my first child? 26. So she's 12, And I'm thinking it's a rite of passage. We're going to get her first perm. We go to lunch, we take before and after pictures, we do all this stuff. 2 weeks later, she's like, Mom, I hate this. I don't want a perm. I want my natural hair. I said, okay. You know, I still kept my perm. But and the younger one never got a perm. So I learned from my kids. As you can see now, I got locks. And so, you know, I learned from my kids, and I switched to natural hair. And I know not everything about code switching is hair. You know, it's can you wear your hijab? Can you wear your traditional shirt and feel comfortable? But I have to tell you, I get madder than mad when I read about that wrestler in New Jersey, who they would not allow to wrestle with his locks unless he cut his hair. They cut that poor boy's hair right before the match. A white woman came up and cut his hair. I get madder than fish grease. Now, 8 states, I Googled it, 8 states now have laws against hair discrimination. So that moves me into my second point, the impact. Can you imagine the mental anguish of that young man? Do I get to wrestle in a match that is important to me? Or do I capitulate and let these white folks cut off my hair? So the mental anguish that poor child must be in, that's some of the extreme aspects of code switching to me. Well, mental anguish. I'm thinking of the other impacts. How is your community viewing you now? What are the black folks saying to that poor young man? You capitulated, you cut your hair. In my day, it was Oreo. Black on the outside, white on the inside. You know, and as a prosecutor, I got called all kinds of names with the war on drugs. And so that moves me into strategies of how to deal with this. When I was a prosecutor and people had their opinions about what I was doing, I had the power to dismiss a case as long as I could back it up. That's powerful. That's powerful. So that's how I dealt with it. That's how I dealt with having to talk right, having to dress right, having to have the right kind of hair. As a prosecutor, I had to dress conservative. I couldn't wear red. I couldn't wear, you know, that was for defense attorneys. Prosecutor had to be conservative. So, but I was doing what I thought was a greater good for the community, and it was important that I be in my position. So that's some of the ways I deal with it now. Right now, I work in D&I work, diversity, equity, inclusion. The fact that I'm in the field addressing some of these barriers gives me great joy and helps me with the fact that sometimes I do have to code switch. It's a part of life, at least for me. So other ways to deal with it, find times to be your authentic self. I have always been involved in sisterhood groups where we could be ourselves, we could talk, we could discuss strategies about how to get on, how to get along in this world of ours. And also mental health. You know, mental health professionals are very important as well. So anyway, that is my story, my view on code switching. I think it is conflict resolution. And I have to do shameless self-promotion. I write romance books. I have 11 or 12 published. All of my romance books are black women, and black women featured in the Northwest. When I first started writing, it was in the late like 1998, I think. I'm dating myself. But when I picked up a book about Seattle, it was about Norwegians or somebody up in Ballard or somebody fishing. And so I take great pride in bringing what I consider to be our slice of the Northwest to the market. And, you know, at first I was resistant to it. I only wanted to write about black women and black men, but my first book, I was nominated for an award, and the woman who wrote the interracial beat me. Black women love interracial books. So anyway, I kind of have a couple of interracials out there now too. So it's under my name, Edwina Martin Arnold. Pick up some books. I think you'll enjoy it. So thank you, and thank you for this opportunity.
So we're going to open it up for Q&A. I'm gonna go sit over there because I want to ask questions too, and you know. But, you know, each one of these panelists, and like as Wayne was saying about the sisterhood and coming together, that's important, because I feel that we can always take something away from each other, and, like, there's something in every one of these ladies that I want, you know, for myself to feel, and it makes us feel connected, cause like, Ms. Benita was saying earlier, we are on the shoulders of our ancestors, so that all connects us here, and so whatever I can learn and take away, whatever I can share, you know, I'm all for it. So like I said, I'm gonna go sit on that side, so that way I can ask questions, but the floor is open, and you all are welcome to answer any question.
All right.
Okay.
Bring them on. What's the questions, y'all?
So I actually have a few, and so it can be directed at one, but if you guys could all answer, but the first one is more specific to Miss Benita and Edwina. Sorry, Sierra, for the first question. But it's more so I work for a major company, and I have worked for a few major companies throughout my life, thank God. That is a blessing. However, and I would definitely get to the imposter syndrome situation in question, but with someone who I feel like has been blessed by Jesus, and to be in these positions with non-people of color, and then always testing I would say my gangsta, or like my authentic self, because I feel like I'm a very authentic and genuine person, and everything I do comes from that space. And I will say, being in that atmosphere, it does create a lot of opportunities, and being in positions that I probably would never be in, and doing things that I would never have done. But at the same time, I battle oftentimes with myself, because it's like the disrespect that comes with having to be into these circles, to acclimate yourself into these circles in a place that they don't want you there, and you have to like kind of do a lot of brown nosing, and then to kind of like, okay, well, I have a purpose and a reason why I'm here, and just battling that. How do you guys, in your years of doing this, how do you, when you feel completely disrespected, and knowing how authentic you are and genuine you are as a person, and for them to kind of use that against you versus being that your quality, how do you move forward? So like Ms. Benita said, you guys let us sit on your shoulders, and eventually someone's going to be able to sit on mine. But I gotta make sure that my mouth don't get, you know, like my passionate self doesn't get in the way of that before, you know, if that makes any sense. So I know I haven't really finished the question, but, you know.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Christina, and, you know, and we get, brushed with that paintbrush of the quote angry black woman.
Yes.
You know, I have always had a very loud voice. You know, I just like Ms. Edwina, I have worked for years as a consultant in racial equity and social justice, and most of the time I don't even need a microphone when I'm doing it. But what I found is then that because I project my voice and I often talk with my hands, that I get feedback that this is intimidating, especially to non-people of color.
Yes.
Right?
Or threaten me.
Right.
Yes.
And so what I've learned to do is, you know, a little bit about what you talked about. There were times when I, you know, make slight modifications. You talked about the need to dress more, you know, conservatively, you know, because of the expectations set. You know, there are times when I do that, and you know, and I guess, I don't know if it's because I'm at this point in my life, you know, I'm 76 this year, I feel less and less inclined to do that, and more inclined to be my authentic self, and it's an ongoing journey. It's not something that happens one day or overnight, but it's finding and asserting bits of you whenever the opportunity comes up. One of the strategies that I found that really helps in those situations when I've been disrespected, what I keep in my hip pocket is questions.
Yeah.
Questions. You know, because a lot of times people say things, and I honestly believe they don't really understand what they're saying. You know, I mean, they haven't thought it through. It's like open mouth and then the brain engages. So, you know, when I was doing a workshop, and at the end of the workshop, one of the participants came up and said, oh, you know, Ms. Horn, you're so articulate, you know, you don't talk black.
Yeah, I get that a lot.
And, you know, you know, in my head, what I did was I slapped the mess out of her. But then, you know, but what I did was, you know, I came back with a question. You know, it took me a couple of minutes to kind of, you know, because you get that, it's a visceral impact. It's an emotional hit, these moments of disrespect. And so I said, you know, looked at her and I said, you know, I'm not familiar with that term. What does talk black mean? And her mouth fell open. She really couldn't answer.
Right.
Right? And so what I find often is kind of like, you know, ask a question to get that person who disrespected you to think about what they said. You know, I said, if I said to you, you don't talk white, what would that mean to you?
Right.
Right? So it's like sometimes you have to flip the script, you know, in that way. And say, you know, it's like people always say, well, you know, what do the young black women think about the President Trump? Nobody ever says, and what do the young white women think about President Trump, right? So sometimes you have to flip the script to really help people see the impact of their words or behavior. So questions is a good strategy. What else would you suggest?
I think questions are a great strategy. What I've done in my life is I come in and I'm quiet. I figure out what the culture is. I smile a lot, right? And then, and in that way in my life, I've built allies. And so if someone just completely disrespects me, you know, that hasn't happened in such a long time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I go in quiet, I build my reputation, and I have allies. And then if somebody says something crazy, you know, I address it right then, most of the time. But I don't go in loud, and I just say, you know, that, or I pull them aside and say, really, that wasn't the thing to say to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then, just a second. But, you know, I sit here and I think about it, and I can't help but equate it to being a woman in this society. Let me tell you a story. I was a prosecutor, right? I'm prosecuting assault cases and rape cases, etc. And I was at a party with my husband back east, and his cousin's boss, a white man, grabbed my knee and fondled it. And I'm a prosecutor.
Wow.
I went completely still. I was so shocked. I didn't know what to do. This man's still fondling my leg. And then after about 3 minutes, I took his hand and put it back on him. And I got up and excused myself. And my husband could tell something was wrong. And I told him, and then he told his cousin. And his cousin asked the man to leave. But I think that was a message from God to me, so I could have more empathy for the women that were in that situation. Because you think I would have jumped up and yelled and cussed somebody out and said, how dare you put your hand on me? And so it's kind of the same, you know what I mean? Because we're taught as women, as minorities, that we're supposed to sit back and be quiet. But there's a way to be forceful, there's a way to be forceful without hitching that angry black woman syndrome. Let me tell you another story and then go ahead.
Just real quick to piggyback on what this young lady said over here is that I'm going to make you say it. Ask the question. To follow up with the question because I don't understand what you mean. So I play dumb in a sense. What is meant by that statement? I don't understand. Being in Washington, 4 years now, 4.5 years, I've experienced more racism here than anywhere in any other state I have ever been in.
Very passive aggressive.
And they'll ask you a question, and you're like, well, what does that mean? Oh, black people don't swim. It's interesting. I was on the swim team. I'll say something like that, and then I let it go. And they'd be like, well, no, I dated this guy. And I said, oh, and he knows all black people. Okay, I understand. You know, and no, that's not what I meant. Well, I don't understand what you meant because I swim.
Right. I really want to emphasize what Mrs. Gwyneth said about allies. Allies are so important. You know, at the point when I entered the business world, it was not uncommon that black jokes would be told in the workplace. And invariably, you know, I was the only black face in the room. It was in the corporation in which I worked. And as a matter of fact, at one point I supervised 150 people and they were all white and male. And then immediately when that joke was told, everybody in the room would turn to look at me like, you know, what is she gonna say? So when you have cultivated allies, then you don't have to be the person to speak up at the point in time when you're in pain. You have positioned someone to speak up for you. But that also means in turn you be an ally. So if somebody tells like a gay joke, you know, I speak up so that my community members in the room who may be who may have a gender identity and expression different than my own, they don't have to be the ones to answer it, right?
Yeah.
So it's that allyship is a two-way street. You know, be allies to those who are being targeted, and prepare others to be allies, and that's cultivating work. You know, it's pulling somebody aside and saying, you know, I was really uncomfortable the other day when such and so said this, and you know, and at the time that I'm trying to process all of this, I was incapable of speaking, and I'm wondering, would you be willing to speak up on my behalf that if something like that happens again? So, you know, I mean, it's a cultivation process, but that's an important aspect, especially in the work environment.
Yeah. And never play into what they want you to do.
Yeah.
They want you to go off.
They want,
Yes.
I've definitely been in
Never play into that.
Like, that's me.
Yeah.
Don't, what did James say, Brown say? I'm not gonna let you bring me out of myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's, you have that moment where you're debating, like, I don't want to follow what they want me to do, but also at the same time, you don't want to be a pushover, so they continue to do that same, you know, thing again. And I've learned, I work for a major nonprofit, and you would think, you know, being in a nonprofit that, you know, they're trying to help people of color, but corporate really is not. And
But they're just people. I mean, we're all people. We're all
Yeah.
human. We've all received these same messages growing up. You know, we have people the people in my community, people of African descent, who have issues with other people of African descent.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's you know, those through that messaging that we got. The other strategy that I use from time to time, if I'm not too blown away or devastated by the comment, is like treating it lightly, like kind of humor, like somebody says something and I go, oh, ouch, oh, that hurt. You know, I mean, just play it all and then say it loud.
Yeah.
And play it all up so everybody's now turning and looking at them and not turning and looking at me.
Yeah.
But again, you're not letting it go by. I think what eats away at us bit by bit by bit by bit is letting those disrespectful insults go by, feeling that we have to swallow it, suck it up. That every time we do that, that positions us to be, to play into that, and it reinforces them to do it again to somebody else.
Yeah.
I just have a comment about that because since I do pop-up markets, I do lots of different ones. I've done one actually right here before, and I've done it in Burien, Seattle, all these places, but I was in Burien before, and the market was mainly Hispanic people, but they take anybody, but it's just mainly the vendors there are Hispanic, and they didn't speak English very well, and but so I was there, and I was just selling things, and we had a white woman come up to us, and my parents are usually with me. They're like my security or whatever, but that's what they try to say. And we were there, and she was just asking kind of just questions about my clothes, but it was not very appropriate, I guess. She would ask me prices on my sale rack, and me, I don't like to give people wrong numbers, so I would go into my system and look to make sure I'm giving you the right information. But she kept saying oh, you don't know how to make this number in half or do this and do that, and I couldn't speak anymore because as soon as I would have, it would have been bad.
Yeah.
And I also have to make sure my mom doesn't do the same thing because she'll really get into it. So in that situation, we just kind of let the lady leave because it's just not easy to like think on your feet with questions like her. And like, that's just the situation that I've ran into, not a lot, but like a couple times where it's just difficult, where you have to like not bring out your own self. So I've been there in business form, so it can be hard. It's not easy.
Yeah, finding something quick on your feet to say, like you said, is often, I think what Miss Benita was saying too, is like, I think it's that's what eats at us, or at least for me, like, you get home and you thinking, you're like, did I let that person say? A lot of people they say that to me, they're like, oh, well, you don't dress like them, or you're not like out there like them. And I'm like, them is me. Like, did I let her talk to me like that? Like, and I can say that, but you can't say that, And so I'm like,
you gotta let a lot of stuff just roll off your back.
Yeah.
If they're not important to you or to your future, just let it roll off your back.
yeah.
I was standing in line at the post office, and a white woman came up to me and said, your kids, your music is too loud. I said, what? They're out. I said, lady, those aren't my kids. They were black. But I'm not gonna sit here and stress myself over this stupid woman.
Yeah.
You just gotta let it go.
We always gotta let everything.
The other thing, journaling helps.
Yeah.
Even if you don't do it every day, but keeping, which also helps if when you decide to become a writer, right? But journaling, just writing it down, like the day, the situation, what happened, even if you never look at it again, it's a way to process it and let it go. Or talk to a sister friend. Do you know what I heard today? But don't just keep it inside, because it's like little by little it begins to eat little pieces of you, and then you begin. That's when we fall into the imposter syndrome. Then we begin to doubt ourselves.
Yeah.
Do I really deserve to even be here? Well, hell yes, we deserve to be there, and you don't. But that's another story.
Right.
So but find some ways. Even if you don't react in the moment, find some ways to let that negative energy go.
Yeah. My husband would come home and dance, and I could tell by the amount of time that he danced what kind of day it was. He would turn on the music real loud. He's a bopper, so he would just turn on the music real loud and just go and bop until he got it out of his system.
Dancing and journaling, that sounds like us.
But let me tell you, imposter syndrome, I've written 11 books. I've been published by Harlequin, and with every book I feel like, what are you doing? You're no good.
Yeah.
I have to fight that feeling every time to get to an end of the book. So my motto is just keep going. Just ignore those negative thoughts in your head and keep pushing forward. You can do it.
Yeah, my situation, I just find passions and try to distract it, and then with the distraction, you can get out of it further and further, and then it doesn't matter anymore. Yeah, so that's kind of how I think about it, but also just, and to make situations better, also, what can I do to make myself better too, though? Like, what can I do to just totally not feel like this at all anymore? So that's with asking questions and just basically researching and like just making your job better or your business better or even relationships better.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it is. Yeah.
Yeah, that is good.
You had a question.
Yeah, I think the society today, I think that we need to all work together, and the microaggressions you guys experience, those aren't okay. And I think for me, whenever I, see it happening, or if I hear it, one time we were having a meeting and our CEO, he was talking to somebody else, he's like, oh, you really got them, you're really cracking the whip on them, aren't you, and he had no idea, like, that, and so, and so I think it's things like that, and so, we call them out on it, we apologize, and I think that's, you need allies. Allies are so important, and I love what you guys are saying, and it's just so important. I think if you see something, say something. You shouldn't have to bottle that in if somebody's making, little comments that we all, it's that's not okay. And so, see something, say something, and
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
I was gonna say, I'm like my mom says, like when it comes to fight or flight, I'm always the fighter. And she says, you're that pit bull. You need to learn how to let go sometimes. And so I said, I'm that black woman that when that one teardrop falls, you better get to running. So I guess you say it's a journey for me, like with running for governor, to learn to try to hone some of that in, because I told my husband one day, I said, I'm trying to find the balance. And like one instance was a group of men who were like having at Starbucks, but they were a board member of a certain company. And I passed out my card, and one of them looked at the other one like I was standing there, and they said, we would never endorse a black woman to tell us what to do. So for me in that moment, I felt violated, dehumanized, disrespected, and it's like, you want me to stand here and not say something? So I said, well, I want you to keep that same energy you had 2.5 seconds ago when I become governor, and you begging for them same backdoor deals. So I was like, in my head, I'm like, okay, am I just, being too defensive and too aggressive because I don't know, maybe somewhere down the line I might win them or what? And I was like,
they're gonna be coming at you with a lot more than that.
Yeah, so I was like, so I'm like, where's the balance for how I respond or don't respond or just let it go and walk away? Because sometimes when I feel violated, and it's a lot of things is from what we've gone through growing up, when you go through families where, like you've had that disrespect or abuse or those type of things. When you get older, you feel like you have to take up for yourself no matter what, all costs. No, I'm not letting that go by. So now it's like, where's that balance? Because I want to be the best representation of our people. Because I know a lot of people say, oh, if you fail or if you do this, that's going to be representation for all black people. So if you don't do it, then they're going to think no black person is good at it. And it's like, no, because we don't feel that way about a white person. Like, everybody's not judging all white people according to Trump or according to Biden or nothing. So how come I have to set that precedence for everything? Even like when I'm reading the campaign books, you have to wear your hair a certain way, you have to do this. And at first I tried, but my hair is not the type of hair where I can do certain things that they want in the book. I'm not going bald for a campaign. So I'm gonna just have to be me. So you might see me in a ponytail, you might see me with my hair straight, but I know one thing everybody remembers me by is my smile. Because they tell me that whenever I walk in the room. They say, I knew it was you. The moment you smile, I knew it was you. So I make that my brand, my smile. But
well, I think you know exactly what you're saying. It's not like a Johnny one note. There's multiple responses, and as we've all said, it's a journey.
Yes.
So you try some things, and over time you find maybe what works better. But if your gut says, this, I can't let this one go, then don't let it go. That the shoulda, woulda, couldas that we do to ourselves. Oh, I shouldn't say anything. Oh, I better. Sometimes that can be that can cause that internal conflict that really begins to build over time. Now, this is why people have bouts of anger. If they say, gee, that person reacted all out of proportion to the situation. Well, it wasn't that situation. We just give an example. My oldest son is 7'1", and he got a lot of his height at an early age. I mean, by 5th grade, he was taller than all of his teachers. And over the course of his life, I wish I had just even a dime for any time anybody said, do you play basketball? And so it's those questions, those predictable questions that come again and again and again. And he finally had to find some different ways of responding to that, rather than just saying yes or no. Because it was, people were trying to put him in a box. Young black man, 7 foot tall, you must be a basketball player. he actually refused to play basketball. His coaches tried to entice him all up through high school. Well, I think it was his junior year he finally started playing basketball. But he did everything else. He bowled, he skied, he skateboarded, because he didn't want to play into that stereotype that others had of him. And so what do we give up? What is it that we might even want to do, but we give up because we're afraid of putting ourselves in a box, right? So I think the more we can do exactly what you said, try different approaches. Some are gonna work better than others. Some are situational. One might work real well here, but not there. But keep ourselves open to multiple possibilities for response, and over time and see which ones we become most comfortable with. And again, for me, fallback is always just a question. I don't even have to make a statement, just a question. Like, that's an interesting statement that you just made. I wonder how you would feel if somebody said, I would never want to be bossed around by a white man and you were running for office. How would you take that? I mean, just flip the script, right? Sometimes, not always, but sometimes that really helps the individual see the absurdity of their comment, right? But yeah, definitely, try different approaches.
And I'm a product of my time, there were times if you commented, you could get hurt. So to me, the best revenge is to win.
Yeah.
And I pray for peace. And I pray that the Lord let me let things go. So I would have just smiled at him and handed him another flyer. When I won, I'd go back to that coffee shop and just smile at him. I'm a basketball coach. I've been coaching for 30 years. And I've heard the ugliest things said to me. And the best revenge, and I tell my girls, and the majority of them are minorities, I look at my girls and I say they can't do anything about a made basket, right? If the refs are racist, make some baskets, and guess what? There's no shot clock. We'll pass the ball around. So, and I want my ladies to understand there's other ways to deal with it. You have to use your brain. You have to use your brain and deal with it, because if you run in there screaming fire, it's a different age today, but you still might get hurt. So that's my philosophy. I pray for peace. I pray to let things go. And in my mind, the best revenge is to win. And I'm winning every day. I got 3 successful kids. I got a job. I got grandbabies. When I get depressed, I look at my paycheck.
That part.
You know what I'm saying? I got friends. I win. The best revenge is to win,
Yes.
and not let these people bother you.
Yes. Yeah, me versus me, for real.
So there was, voter turnout, last election was 31%. How do you think we can how do you think we can get more voters to come out? I feel like if we can pull 10% of any voting pool into an election, you can really change that election. And so how do we get people motivated to vote?
If what's happening in society isn't motivating people.
Yeah.
Listening to your numbers is interesting. I mean, I haven't focused on it, but I thought they were higher in Washington.
What percent?
I just keep counting. I looked for
Oh,
King
just
County.
King County, okay.
What percent did you say?
31%
31%?
in the last, for the.
Engage the young people.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna ask about mentorship. First of all, my ex-husband played basketball, and he's tall too, and people like, do you play basketball? And he'd be like, no, water polo. So that was always his response, but that's what I was gonna say, mentorship. So I have, and I was also gonna talk about families as well. Like, I don't have the most supportive family, and I think a lot of my early trauma came from that, and feeling that imposter syndrome at an early age, because, and it sounds like it's Sierra, right? That you have a very supportive set of parents. First of all, you got a set of parents, that's great. And then, but a lot of my trauma came from my family, and then going into a workforce that is white and then having that same kind of trauma built on top of it. And so that's why I always say that I'm very blessed, because God continues to bring me out of that. But during that time, because my mom passed away at a young age, I always tried to like seek mentorship. And a lot of the times when you're in the Black community, a lot of the women don't seem to have that reach one, teach one type of mindset. It's not some place where you can build off. And so when you're trying to navigate and you don't know to like network and go out to like get on Eventbrite and go to social events and things like that, when you're trying to get out of that fog, I guess, and then trying to find mentorships and then being in this kind of crab-like society that we got going on, how do you, with fighting imposter syndrome, how do you like find that middle ground when there's not that many people engaging with the youth, when there's not that many mentorships, mentor possibilities, etc. Like what would you suggest that a person who is lacking that, how to find themselves when dealing with imposter syndrome?
For me, I guess, like, yeah, I have a set of parents. I'm very happy and blessed for that, and my family's very close. But like, outside of that, like my great-grandmother was white. She did not like me because I was darker than my brother, so she wouldn't hold me or anything at all, so I dealt with that. And that was my mom's side. And then my dad's side, my aunt, she was basically jealous that I was born, because her daughter was supposed to be the last daughter in the family, but I'm actually that one. So she didn't like me either. So like when it comes to like women in the family, I look like them, like I really look like them, but I don't act like them.
Right.
They don't really like me like that. So like I guess for people who look like me, I don't have support from them really. So that was like hard, because I don't really have many like family members who I can go to other than my parents and like my mom's mom, and you know, so like just close people. So that's kind of like a struggle. I mean, even me having the parents, like in high school I was bullied and I was told I would be fine because I have a set of parents. Instead of like taking care of the problem, that's what the principal said to my mom, like, no, you guys have her, she's fine, they can continue to do whatever. So I mean, like, in my life I've had a lot of like negative things happen, but I don't know, I just push with confidence. So like with finding, like I get like the mentor thing, it's a struggle and it's hard for me too. That's why I kind of seek anybody who can give it to me, whatever color. If they're like interested on helping me, I'll take that. But some, like honestly, like with building my business, I was on social media a lot. Like I was just looking at stuff. Like I was looking at people's social media, how they got their business together. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on TikTok, how they like present their packages, or where they buy clothes from, like all this stuff. So I would suggest maybe seeking other stuff and like doing research if you can't find like that person right here and right now. Because even the mentor who is the owner of the business, I don't really have her as a mentor anymore, because she was still trying to be my boss, and I was like, look, you're not my boss anymore. I'm the one who owns the business, and I had to kind of reality check her, and she couldn't handle that. So I'm like, well, fine. Like, I'm not hurt from that, and I was not trying to hurt you, but it's kind of sad that you took it that way. So, yeah, I just kind of do a lot of research. That's just kind of me. I look at how other people are doing their business, so I can at least try to piggyback on that too. So, but I know there's a lot of people who can at least like, you know, like mentor programs, I'm sure. I don't know.
Yeah, for me, I guess I'm trying to think how that got started. I've always surrounded myself and been surrounded by women. I had aunties, who, I remember when my sister and I were very young, we would hide under their quilting frames, when they all came together, so we could listen to the stories that they told and learn from that. for me, I think it involved from a very early age, like from my 20s, like getting out in the community. You know, like really committing myself to you know, like as one of the African queens was oft said, leave things more beautiful than you find them. So I was, you know, involved in, and I grew up in Portland. I was involved in the Urban League, and that was the Urban League in our city was a very activist oriented organization. So where we went in for and helped form other coalitions that made major changes in the community. You know, don't get me wrong, Portland is one of the most racist cities you could ever live in. Yeah. But we were able to make some incremental changes. And then, you know, being out in the community, then you meet people. You know, like, you know, one of my visions is that sometime in my life, while I'm still on this earth, I'm gonna write a book. So I've just added Miss Edwina to my list. She doesn't know it yet, but I'm gonna ask her to be my mentor. I mean, it's like getting out there and meeting people.
Yes.
You know, I've been in the same book club for over 20 years. It's all Black women. We only read Black authors. You're now on our list. Okay.
I want to buy one.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, I have spent since 2000. You know, I've worked with a group of Black women who have orchestrated, and we work as volunteers to plan and navigate these trips where we take our sisters to the continent. You know, so I've met some incredible people. You know, Dr. Maxine Mims, who founded the Evergreen State College in Tacoma. Yeah. At her kitchen table, that was where that college started. Oh, yeah. Dr. Joy Hardiman, who was her successor, and now Dr. Marcia Tatarunga, you know, who is now the dean at the Tacoma campus. So, you know, it's like when you get out there in the community, and then that, and you know, meeting people, and don't be shy. You know, just say, hey, you know, I mean, and I get asked all the time, you know, Benita, could we have coffee, lunch, whatever? Could I come talk to you? Could I follow you around? Could I attend one of your presentations or workshops? Absolutely, because everything I learned from somebody else. Mm-hmm. You know, we're not islands. You know, however great we think we are, just like, I like your examples, like I look at the web and see what other social media, see what other people are doing. There's nothing new under the sun, but what makes us unique is how we put it together and package it, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And my story is very similar to Benita's. I've cultivated friendships. You know, if I'm at a networking event and somebody's interesting to me, when I was young, I'd go up and say, hi, I'm Edwina. I would just really like to go to lunch. And then you go to lunch, and then you build a relationship, and then that person is your mentor. You know, so that's kind of how I've done it over the years. And then always welcome, pay it forward. You know, when I first started writing romance books, I got the manuscript done, and I didn't know what to do. And my husband had a friend of a friend who was a successful romance author, and she mentored me. And so anybody who asks me for help, I'm more than willing to tell you everything that I know. But just cultivating relationships, saying hi, how you doing? I'd really just like to know more. Can we meet for coffee?
That's how we met.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how we met. I missed one of her book signings, and I had all of her books. Yeah. And so I reached out on Instagram and said, you know, on your next book signing, would you sign all of my books? She was like, why don't we meet for coffee?
Oh my goodness.
I was just like, okay. and 4 years ago, and
Wow.
Still together. And you know, even she's given me opportunities to experience different meetings and get my mind working on what I need to do for me and what my next step is. And her books are just bomb too. I'm just gonna throw that out there. I love her books because in life it's a conversation, like we're all talking here. It's a conversation. There's a conflict, there's a resolution, and a lot of times things can be resolved with a conversation. Yeah. Exactly. And people don't do that, and so that's why I loved her books. And I was like, no, I want my name in it. Yeah. I want it to say Sojourner. And so because when we met, she was like, you got all my books. I was like, yeah, I read. Yeah. You know, went on a trip, and I got everybody a set. Here's a set. This is my gift to the whole group. Yeah. Everybody gets a set of the books.
That's incredible.
But yeah, just identifying and not being scared to just say, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
I would like to learn from you.
Okay. Yeah. FYI, you guys are both from Texas and you guys both write books, so
Yeah.
just FYI.
Yeah, I write as well. Children's books and also my journey or my life experience books. I dabbled like 30 seconds in romance, and then I realized the way I write, only my husband could read it. So he has his own books. It's really relaxing, like Miss Bonita was saying. Journaling, like I journal everything. I picked up a book from like my first year of college, and I was like, this was my mindset then. Woo, I needed Jesus.
Yeah.
And then, you know, going through like the traumas, the healing and not knowing you healing. Writing is very therapeutic.
Yes.
And a lot of people, even in romance, even in, you know, life experience, even in children's books, I started writing children's books. My son was my inspiration. And I was going into schools and teaching, and I was seeing the stuff I was teaching him at home, and I was like, well, where's the love? Everybody fighting over a toy. Well, if you love your friend or you enjoy your friend, you'll want to share with them. And so that's how that line got started. And my little Miss Missy here, she is a manifester for me. So he was the inspiration, but when she came, I would read her the stories, because I had wrote him plenty of stories. I would read her the stories, and she's like, okay, so where's the picture? She's the reason why I publish books and why we have the children's publishing companies, because she was like, no, I need to see this.
That's fantastic.
So,
You know, I believe everybody has a story to tell.
oh yes, yes, yes.
That's for sure.
And you know, and it's I think, you know, we all know in the work that we do around, you know, equity, diversity, and racial equity, what you have to not only engage people's thinking, but you have to engage their hearts, and the way that you do that is by sharing stories.
Yeah, so true. What made you run for governor?
What made me run for governor is, you know, I was tired of everybody, you know, like people saying, oh, pick the lesser evil. And me, I'm the daughter of a pastor. So to me, I've always been taught evil is evil. So there's no such thing as picking a lesser evil. So if we don't have anybody to pick from, then I was starting to feel like, well, then I almost feel like everybody else. I don't want to vote. So then I thought about it, and I told my husband, I said, you know, I will vote for me, because I understand what it's like to scrape the change out of the couch and make meals for weeks out of it, and what everybody else is going through, because I'm tired of being another data or a statistic.
Yeah.
So everybody else doesn't want to be another data statistic. They need somebody who can relate and advocate for them. We have enough attorneys that always run, but we need people who actually relate to the people and understand the people. So that's
Makes
what,
sense.
yeah. And I have another question. So I also have my own book out. It's called Purely Unadulterated Me, Open Me and Read Me. So in my journey, I am like transparent about everything. I write like how mad I was, whether I was angry at God at the time. All of those different experiences are transparent. Tell all my family business. You know what I mean? So, and my thing is, I'm not taking it down. In fact, Mindy has one of my books just read them. And so my question is about personal self and public self, like with campaigning. Now, I know that there's reporters who will go dig up something. There's, like I said, my book out there. And then there are, so but it's a two-part question. So like we have like whether it's family secrets in the past, like I said, I've exposed those in my books. But running is not about covering up for the predators, but I want to be more respecting of the victims, because they are entitled to heal at their own pace. So like if stories come up, and it's like, oh, so-and-so in your family did this to this person, or even if it's another family member who shared that, when the question is asked me, how do I share a personal self and a public self to respect where I'm not putting that victim to feeling re-victimized, because I want to, what did you say? not feel like I'm covering up for the predator, because that's not what I'm good at. But I also don't want the victim to be, you know how like public can go attack that victim, and why aren't you out here? Why aren't you up here reporting this? And like you said about the other day where you earlier where you understand how those victims might feel, and not say something at the moment or not be all loud about it. But how do I share my story as a personal self or a public self, or if somebody asks me about stories from?
Well, that's a tough one because you are a public figure, you know, and I think about President Biden and his son, and I think he's handling it perfectly by saying, I love my son. He's not perfect, but I love my son. And if you love your family member, you know, I love my family member, but they need to be held accountable for what they did, and I'm really sorry for anyone that might have been hurt in the situation. That's probably how I would handle it.
Yeah.
Because if you're a public figure, the questions, all the ugliness is gonna come. And what I do, I don't know if it's helpful to you guys, but, you know, I always think, what would my mother say? Because my mother is so diplomatic, you know, so diplomatic. And so, I think about her. I know that doesn't help you because you don't know my mother. but I think acknowledging it, and you know, like Biden, he says, I love my son, and he's not going to get into the minutia. And so I think if you come up with answers like that respect both sides, and do not allow them to bring you into the minutia of it, that's probably the best advice I can give.
So if I understand you correctly, you're saying to make the statement and put a period at the end of it.
Exactly. You know, like I love everyone in my family. I don't condone what was done wrongly, and I feel bad for anybody who was hurt. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Next question.
You know, and I thought you heard you say, you know, how, you know, as people, as you travel around the state and people have shared their stories with you, how do you share their stories? Were you talking about other people's stories or your
No,
own?
like my stories.
Your
like
story.
my stories are relatable to people.
Right.
And, you know, like even if we talk about whether it's being a victim of sexual abuse or victim of these type of things, my stories are relatable. And some of those stories might be by family members, because a lot of those things tend to happen with
I
somebody
wouldn't bring them out.
Mm-mm.
No, that's not your place.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
In my humble opinion.
No,
it's your
not
place to bring
unless
out.
that person has said to you,
Yes.
I want you to share my story.
Right.
Yeah.
I totally agree with Ms. Edwin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about, it comes up as a question.
Yeah.
But I would never, like I said, you know, there's some stories I can't write till my husband and my kids are dead. So, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah.
I always think of Annalise Nin, because she didn't write her stuff till her husband was dead. That's, you guys familiar with Annalise? I might be saying her name wrong, but Annalise Nin was one of the first female erotica writers, and she's basically just writing about her own she was freaky as freaky can get. She was writing about her own, and this is like what, the 1920s,
Oh, yeah,
1930s.
yeah. I remember reading her stuff in college.
She slept with Josephine Baker.
She telling everybody business.
Yeah, but she waited until people were dead. So yeah, pick up some Annalise Nin. There's some good reading in there.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think, you know, from a compassionate standpoint, a lot of times we're trying to bridge with that person, like they're sharing their story, and you can say, oh yeah, I've got a family member who's been through that. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
And that's what I say too.
Just be that compassionate listener.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sorry, you know, when I'm elected, what can I do? So that this doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and that's what I was saying too, like if it's dug up, because I have some family members who just
Yeah.
put stuff out on social media, I have no control
Yeah.
over.
yeah,
So-
and you know, and
And you just address
that's
it.
and that's
You
where
address
you
it
use
when it comes
the
up.
Joe Biden answer. I think that's one of the best ones I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whew. Did you guys? I'm just bringing this up because we're mostly women here, and it was shocking to me. But the Spanish soccer team, where that guy from the federation grabbed the player and kissed her without her consent, and
So the Spanish team said they would not play again until that guy resigned, and he was fighting. But anyway, he resigned this morning.
Oh, good. Yeah, talk about stepping over the line.
He tried to say she consented. She said, I didn't consent to that. And then the U.S. team stood behind her, and a whole bunch of other women's teams stood behind her. And he resigned this morning. So,
Good news, good news.
yeah.
So are we at the end of our questions?
I just have a statement. You build a tribe. You
Oh.
have to build a tribe, and I'm born in '65. I grew up military, and I have been surrounded mostly by white males throughout my life. And it wasn't until probably about 10 years ago that I was like, what am I doing? And I started gaining my little tribe of Black females, and it made a difference. It made a difference in how I viewed myself. It went from I'm an imposter to this is who I am. And so just building that tribe of women, mentors, friends, people that back you and tell you, okay, well, when you're feeling this way, no, it's not that way. It's not. You are, what you're doing is good. Keep on with what you're doing. We're behind you. You have to build a tribe.
Yeah.
And growing up military, I wasn't around my family. And so being able to sit under the quilting, I didn't get that.
Yeah.
You know, and so now I'm trying to do what I didn't get. I'm trying to provide that for other females out there. And so I'm going to school for social work. I work with a nonprofit, and it deals with minority women. And so I'm trying to do that and build their tribe so that they have something to fall back on.
I can totally agree with that. And with Miss Benita, I guess it sits with me when she was like, she's at the point where she's 76 and she can care less what you think.
Yeah.
I think when I turned 32, I could care less.
Oh, Miss Benita, we got some babies in here.
But you know, but that's the good news, because you know, I'm passing the baton every chance I get, right? You know.
But it took a while, cause it was imposter, like the young lady, it was, well, do I like myself enough do I trust people enough to let them see my authentic self? So that became the question. And so once I liked me, just the way I was, it was like, okay, so do I trust the next person to respect my authentic self? I do when I go in front of them, I need to ask them, what's the sky is blue, what's the tree still green? Like, what do I need to bring?
Yeah, words of wisdom. I mean, how do I feel about me? If I don't like me, why would others?
Right.
Right?
Yeah, like you
So, I mean, it's an inside-out job.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we have to shift the paradigm in terms of how we see ourselves.
And that's what you project. If you like yourself, others are drawn to you.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
If you don't like yourselves, others can feel it and want to take advantage of you.
Yes.
So, loving yourself is key.
Yes.
And also, like they all said up there, don't give up.
Yeah.
You just gotta keep going. Stuff is gonna happen, but you gotta keep going. My new motto is even in the negative, I find the positive.
Right. Right.
Find the positive even in the negative.
One of my mother's mantras, she had many, but one of them was, you know, you can't control what comes at you, but what you can control is how you respond.
Yeah.
And that's always where we're in control.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do we broaden that repertoire of responses?
Yep, and not the angry black one.
No, they always trying to put that on us when we respond or when we have emotions, and it's like, I'm not angry, but I want you to understand that what you're saying to me is incorrect. It's not, you know, there's ways you talk to people, there's ways you can respect people, and it doesn't have to be a cultural thing. It's just, it has to be a human thing, you know. And I think sometimes I find, especially when dealing with white people, it's not a human thing. It's a hierarchy, you know, or because you have a title, you think you're better than me, and you're not. You would never live these experiences that I lived and survive like I'm surviving and thrive like I'm thriving, and so, it's always like an adjustment piece, it's like it's a game, and for me, I've never been that kid. I didn't go to the Boys and Girls Club, I've never been into games, I didn't play with Barbies, and so now I gotta, like, why am I having to constantly shift and adjust? But like someone said earlier, I had to tell a lady, I was like, you're constantly in my business, and I want to let you know, thank you for making me better. She told, so I work and I live in kind of like the same place. I live in the place that I work for, but in a different location. And so even though I wasn't on the clock, and even though I wasn't being threatening to her, what my property management went and told my supervisor was I was threatening her when I told her to have a blessed day. Because you're, and it's like, first of all, in any other job, where could you, if I lived here, if I live out of place and I work for Costco, my property management can never go to Costco and be like, well, Deanna today was, and so that's a problem right there. And then two, I told you to have a blessed day. Where is the threat? But because I'm a Black woman, and she was shocked when I told her that, and because you felt some type of way, and she also lied and said I told her that she should have a day that she deserves or something like that. And I was like, I didn't say that. But had I said that, you're either gonna have a great one or you're gonna have a bad one. But that's on you. Like, that's not mine. I'm blessing you with whatever you deserve, And so it's that constant thing. Like, even I literally was like calm, and I was like, you know what? You're making me a better person because you're always in my business, which means I always have to be on my toes. And so I want to thank you and have a blessed day. And she went and said I was threatening her. And there's just I'm like, there's no winning around this, but you're not going to tell them that, you're getting drugs from the guy on the second floor, And so it's that like they can do whatever they want to do. And it just becomes a little like unsettling. But I think what I already knew and what you guys confirmed today was just, a win is a win, and they can't say, and that's one thing for me, like, they can never say Deanna and her work is not, is not impeccable, because not only do I do my job, I excel at it, and I have residents in a short period of time saying, thank you, like, you're helping my children, and you're doing this, and you're doing that, and you can't take that away from me, because that's authentically me. And so whether I'm doing that here, or I'm doing it over there, that's gonna remain me. And so I think they're always trying to crush those grapes, and it's like, you just gonna make me into a fine wine,
And those are your allies. Get your allies to write letters. Or send an email, and then when the negative person comes along, it's balanced against all of that. So cultivate your allies.
That's a good one.
And I have to admit, thinking about all of this, one place where I am the angry Black woman and I seem to have no control over it is when someone messes with my kids.
That part.
I'm cussing people out at their school.
That's one thing they did. This is telling too much of my business, but they definitely they called CPS on me. And I work with these people. And the CPS man came into my house and he literally walked out and was like, refrigerator was full, house is nice, my kids are well taken care of, and he had to talk to my kids alone, and he came in and he left, and the case was closed immediately.
Well, you gotta get the documentation on that.
But it's just
you wrote up, get it.
I have, and but for them to be a nonprofit and to be in their funding to be supporting and helping people, but I actually work for you, and your workers are doing this to not me but like other people, and this is something that they have the freedom to do. It's just a constant thing that I find within that population, that there's no real not responsibility, there's no they have no accountability for what the things that they do to people. They have no repercussions for their actions. Everything we do, we get repercussions for. We get a write-up, or we get, we have to take this home with us, or we have all these things that weigh us down, but they get to move and do freely.
The residents?
No, I'm talking about
other workers?
I'm talking about non-people of color. Like, they just get to, and so it affects it has that relationship of like, you know,
Flip the script, document every time that happens to
Yeah.
you and send it to your supervisor.
and that's why I said they make me better, because
Yeah.
now I'm writing up a storm. Like everything I do, it's like 1201. They said this and they did that, you know, and they really make me better. And I wasn't being sarcastic when I was telling her that. I was really thanking her from the bottom of my heart, you know. But for her to be like, oh, she's threatening, and I was talking to her like this, and I said, bless you and have a great day.
That's guilt.
Yes.
I was gonna say that.
Yeah.
It's just guilt.
That's guilt.
Well, jealousy, I think.
Yeah, that's what I said. I said, why you so, I'm thinking in my head,
She
why
didn't
you
have a comeback either.
No, she didn't. Her face was so shocked. She was shocked that I was like not being, because she's so used to people being like angry at her and yelling at her. And I'm not going to do that with you. I'm not going to lay down in the mud with you, but I want to let you know, thank you, because now my writing skills are up. Like now, I'm like my documentation skills are up. You're making me a better person. And you guys like, you should just let the sleeping dog lie. But now you're gonna make me even better at my job. You know.
The best revenge is the win.
Yeah.
Making that lemonade out of a lemon.
Yes.
But before we adjourn, can we take a group picture?
I was
Yes.
gonna ask a question.
Okay.
I feel like being in this environment, what are specific strategies that you can adopt, especially as a woman of color, to scale above all the trials and thrive in your industry?
So let me make sure I understand your question. So what, as a woman of color, what we can do?
Yeah, what are the strategies that you can adopt to keep scaling above and thrive in whatever industry that you're in here? Because sometimes it's really challenging.
Yeah.
You're trying to do something, you're trying to be really good at it, but just because you're a person of color, it's hard for people to trust that you've got this and you can do it.
Yeah.
I think what I do is I break it down into the steps that I need to follow.
Okay.
So say, I want to be a basketball coach. So, and it's not enough to just have played, and everybody's saying, you're a woman, you can't coach, you can't get kids scholarships. Well, what do I need to do? I need to know how to organize my practices around offense or defense, but I make a list of what I need to do, and then I work that list every day. And I keep those negative thoughts and those negative people out, and I work my list and I keep going forward. So that's what I do. And then, and then I still sometimes look in the mirror every day and say, I like myself unconditionally.
Exactly.
And let me start my day. And sometimes I break it into, what can I get done in this hour when I'm feeling really insecure? What can I do in this hour? And then when I do it, I take a deep breath and I'm happy. So breaking it up into smaller pieces, accomplishing those pieces, and then let yourself feel the joy of having done that. And get sleep. Get up the next day and say what your list is. Just keep moving forward. Keep moving forward.
Thank you.
I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, so definitely the list and breaking it down and making sure you have your deadlines or you have all the paperwork you need and like all the whatever. So that's what I did when I started my business to make sure. But now since I do lots of pop-ups and things like that, I honestly let my clothes or my items speak for themselves. Because it's I know my stuff will sell. You know what I mean? I have the confidence because I know, at least for marketing in Seattle, I know what people like. So and I try to have at least a range for age and size and style, if you want to crop top compared to more of a long sleeve shirt or something like that. So I know I have items people would like at the pop-up. So I know how to speak, they speak for themselves. However, because I am Black, when I started the pop-ups, I felt weird because I was is that why no one's really coming over here? Is it because I'm literally because I never try to think about that because I'm that's not me, okay? I'm not just a skin tone. So it's I just don't even think about that. But then sometimes I do, and then it's I really hope not, but you know what? I'm not even gonna think about it anymore. But Yeah, but I win people over with kindness, cause like with the smile thing, I smile all the time. I say hi to anybody who shows up. But I also cause I worked in retail before, and I don't like to be annoyed at a store, so I'm just like, hey, just let me know if you need anything. I'm gonna be somewhere else, or like I'll be around, but I'm not gonna bother you or follow you. So yeah, I just kind of stick to all the positives I know, write stuff down, especially take notes. Yeah. Because I've changed my pop-up situation like at least 3 times to make it more appealing for customers to come inside my little booth.
Sounds
How do you feel about when you had to maneuver and like switch? Do you feel like, oh man, I spent all this work on this past like way, or you transition easily? Do you transition like when you have to make those switches and tweaks to better your position, your business? Do you take it with pride, or is it something you're like, I just did this, your mindset?
I don't know, I get excited when I have ideas and then I want to switch things. Like the last time I switched up my booth configuration or something like that, I was excited because I was like, you know what, I want to make this more like a store, like what's inviting. And usually when you walk in a store, you have like little tables in the front and they're showing like folded clothes or jewelry or whatever. So I mean, I only have 10 by 10 feet, right? So I can only do so much, but I bought 2 smaller tables, did it like that, and then I have clothing racks and like a jewelry rack or whatever, so people can come in a loop, and that's it. Like I just before that I had 2 bigger tables, and people always ask me, hey, can I come inside? I'm like, I'm done with that question because you're supposed to come inside. So I always just take the feedback that's not actually like a commentary or whatever the word is, I'm forgetting, but basically it's like I just, from the experiences, I hear it and then I change it. And then I don't get it as much anymore.
But it's part of your learning.
Yeah.
Learning how to pivot and grow. You shouldn't get frustrated that you didn't know everything in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the one thing I forgot to add was give yourself grace.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I
You
say.
fall off your list for a month.
Yes.
Jump back on it when you can and give yourself grace and keep moving forward.
Or if something turns out, not as successfully as you planned that it would, give yourself grace. It's been, there are empirical studies that show that human beings are hardwired to learn from their mistakes. There's no reading, there's no wisdom that somebody can share. As parents, the minute we say to a child, don't touch that stove, it's hot, the first thing they do is put their finger on it. We're hardwired to learn from experience. And so it's not about I failed, but it's like, what did I learn?
Yeah.
What would I do differently the next time?
Yeah.
I don't believe in failures. They're all learning opportunities.
Yeah, that's why I asked that question, because I don't feel like we promote that enough in the Black community. Like we don't. Oftentimes when people have something, they fail and then they give up, and there's not a lot of people that's like, hey, keep going, and so that's why I just kind of wanted you guys to like get that out there a little bit, because we don't often have that second mindset, like, hey, it's a learning experience, you failed to try again. That's not really popular within our community, so
That's true.
yeah.
And I wanted to say, so pretty much this is mostly my tribe here in the room. And I know sometimes they've asked the question, people on the team ask the question like, oh, why me? Why are you taking me with you? Because I'm not this or I'm not that. And we're behind you because you're the spokesperson for us. You have that voice, but I see the voice also in them, which is why I always say in my campaign, I'm not running for governor. We are running for governor. So my thing is I'm gonna start with Mindy over here. Mindy's my driver. She takes off from work. She literally takes off from work and drives me to Eastern Washington.
Wow.
We've been twice, and she'll stay the whole week with me and lose a paycheck just to come take me to Washington and be my driver. 2, she also say, just in case these white folks aren't receptive of you, I'll be the voice and get you.
I like that.
Yes.
Then we have Cynthia, AKA Cint, and she's another veteran. as well as myself, and she's like our our research voice, those type of things. So when we're talking about policies and bills, and we'll both talk about policies and bills and research them, but I need a reasonable person to either see from another side or perspective than myself. So it's like devil's advocate for the team, because we'll bring it and present it to the team. So the team knows, okay, this is how I understand it. And her being in the field that she's in with social work, this is how what she would have to carry out if it was her. You know, those type of things. And then right here is Princess. Princess is our she just joined our team, event coordinating. And so she's just come on board, and we're excited.
Thank you.
And then we have Miss Deanna. So Deanna, and I'll put them both together, and Jasmine next to her, both
The dream team
co-campaign managing for me, because we don't have funds to pay for all the other things, and I think it's $5,000 to $10,000 a month for a campaign manager. So we co-campaign manage together, and then we'll probably let other people volunteer in other areas, and they'll just be at the top, because for me, everybody that's here are part of the team, not asking for anything because they believe in the campaign. Because like I said, I'm not running, we all are running for governor. And although our team is predominantly women and Black women, we actually have a lot of white men on the team, because we call it a ladies' Hattitude. They're not here, but they have no problem taking leadership from women, let alone Black women, and they are very supportive of us, and jump in and ask what can they do, how can they help. And even with our tribe, so this is like our first event of this, but we want to do more of these, because even though it's more for me, we all want to learn together of how to carry ourselves, how to respond. And one way I've learned is, like in my book I write about the way I train my children about predators and things, is I practice with them. I gave them hands-on activities. So we want to do more hands-on. So even if we have the white men on our team, because some of them could look stereotypically like a racist, you know, like if you just walk up and you judge them, some of them can look like that. So we want to have them come at us. And I always learned that even with being a, what did you say? When you overcome being sexual trauma from the military, like overcoming PTSD and those things, one thing I learned was also retraining the perception. So put myself in the same situation but have a good outcome. Yes, so that's what we want to have, like more of those type of sessions, but for us as women. Well, not as just as women, because men have sent emails and asked why. It's like they want to be part of the Hattitude. So I was like, okay, fine, it's going to be open. Yeah. But yep. So that's our tribe, and then I love Miss Benita. I met her a few years ago through my college president, and it's just, she gives me that. Like my grandmother passed away, and I love my grandma, and so she just gives me that. I guess you feel that emptiness of like having that cultural relation, and that bridging that gap of the generations, and being able to have something to carry on. So that's like when I see her, I'm like, oh, I want to have my white hair just like her. Be so fine when I walk and talk and carry myself and not care about anybody else. And then I look at Sierra, and it's like she's young. She might be younger than me, but she's doing it. At her age, I would have been like, I don't know where to start. Nobody's helping me, so I'm just going to go over here and work at Walmart. Yeah. Or something.
Please charge it.
No, ma'am.
And then I met Ms. Edwina through another friend of ours, and I started following her on social media. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, like everything. Like she's so multi-talented, whereas I have a lot of talent and people always tell you, you just master this one thing.
Yeah,
and they
that's
put
what
you in
I-
this box. But she's not living in the box, she's living outside of the box. And I'm like, I can live outside of the box too.
She's like, how many businesses?
So you know, I'm grateful for my tribe that I have here and inviting you guys in the tribe and stuff. But yes, I love that. And also, we're gonna take a group picture as well.
Yes.
And then after this, everybody's welcome to mingle. And if you guys have any suggestions or ideas about the event, Jasmine and Dee will be around too as well. And I'm gonna also set that up so that way all of us can get in the picture too.
Yes.
While we're doing that, Ms. Edwina, how do you manage all of that?
You know, I don't really think of it that way. I just think of it like following my interests,
Yeah.
and that's
Just
kind of
doing
where
it.
it leads. Yeah.
President Dawkins' life, that's all.
I think my house is too big.
Oh yeah. Any size hat because there's a bigger one.
So I have to ask for the restroom, but for you guys have to take a picture.
I know it's that. They would know.
So who would hold the phone to take the photos, the group photos?
I'm gonna, and then we can always screenshot out of here too, as well. As a matter of fact, do me a favor, go get one of the where's that guy that was in here?
Okay, I'll get one. Don't worry. For the pictures, right?
Yeah, it was a guy who got a face mask.
And my kids play cowgirl with this, so.
I'm gonna go to the restroom real quick.
It's gonna be the octopus. I'll get ready to go. We're gonna take a picture, and then we're done. We gotta go to Jalen and his football game.
I wanna say, stand right there.
I said I need a church house. And I can't find it. I said, yeah, we gotta do a test this. Can she see us? I was like, you know, a testing? I wanna make sure.
Okay, so then maybe I should set it up on here.
I said, I wasn't gonna show up with anything that I didn't know.